There's a particular kind that only happens after midnight. Not the absence of sound, the presence of something listening. The people in tonight's stories all noticed it too. They'll tell you it was nothing, a draft, a trick of tired eyes. They'll tell you that right up until the part they can't explain. So get comfortable. Turn the lights down. And if you happen to drift off somewhere in the middle, that's all right. These stories will keep going without you. Tonight I have 8 of them for you. 8 true paranormal encounters, told slow and low to carry you down into sleep. Let's begin. Story 1. We'll start somewhere ordinary. A house. A couple. A home that remembered more than it should have. We bought the place because it was cheap, and it was cheap because it had been empty for a long time. The previous owner had passed away in it, which the agent mentioned the way you mention the weather, quickly, hoping you won't dwell. I remember she said the word peacefully twice, as if saying it more than once would settle the matter. And then she moved us briskly along to the garden. I want to set the scene properly, because the scene is most of the story. It was an old house, the kind with too many small rooms instead of a few big ones, the kind built in a decade when people kept the kitchen separate and the hallways narrow. Everything had been freshly painted before we viewed it. New carpets, new fittings, the smell of primer still hanging in the air, the smell that means someone wants you to see possibility instead of history. We saw possibility. We signed the papers. We moved in over a long weekend in the autumn, the 2 of us, and more boxes than 2 people should own. The first 3 weeks were ordinary, boxes everywhere. The particular exhaustion of a new place, where you don't yet know which stair creaks or which window sticks, where your feet haven't learned the floor. We ate dinner sitting on the floor for the first week because we couldn't find the legs to the table. We laughed a lot. It was, by every measure, a happy time. The thing I noticed first was small. So small I didn't even register it as a thing for a while. I'd walk into the kitchen in the dark, half asleep, getting a glass of water the way you do at 2 in the morning without really waking up. And I'd reach for the light switch where it should be, on the left as you come in, at shoulder height, the place your hand goes without being told. And my hand would find bare wall, smooth, cool, painted wall, and no switch. I'd have to wake up a little more, blink, feel around in the dark, and find the switch a full foot further along than my hand had expected it to be. The first few times I thought nothing of it. You move house, your hands are stupid for a while. They keep reaching for the old kitchen, the old fridge, the old everything. I mentioned it to my wife one morning, half as a joke. She laughed and said I'd lived in our old apartment for 9 years. Of course, my hands still thought they were there. Give it a month, she said. You'll learn the house. But I didn't learn the house. If anything, it got stranger because I started doing it in other rooms. Reaching for a banister that turned out to be on the wrong side of the stairs, my hand closing on air while my body leaned into a turn that wasn't there. Pulling open the cupboard where I was absolutely certain the glasses lived, finding a stack of pots instead, and standing there in the dark genuinely confused because I could have sworn the glasses were there. My hand knew the glasses were there. And that's the thing I kept circling back to, lying awake afterward. It wasn't that I was forgetting where things were in the new house. It was that my body seemed to confidently know where things should be, and kept being wrong in the same specific ways. The same wrong switch, the same wrong banister, the same wrong cupboard, as if I'd already lived here for years, in a slightly different version of the house, and my hands were navigating that version instead of this one. One gray afternoon, when my wife was out and the house was very quiet, I got curious in the way you do when an idea has been bothering you for weeks. I sat down at the computer and dug up the old property listing. From before the renovation, the photos the previous owner's family must have used to sell it. They were still online the way these things always are, lurking on some real estate archive that never forgets anything. And there it was. I went through them slowly, room by room, my coffee going cold beside me. The kitchen, before the new paint, before the new fittings. The light switch had been on the left, exactly where my hand kept reaching. The staircase, before the new carpet, the banister had been on the other side, exactly where my body kept leaning. And the cupboard, in a grainy photo of the old kitchen, stood open, and inside it, on the shelf where I kept finding pots, sat a neat row of drinking glasses. My body wasn't remembering our old apartment. It had never been confused at all. It was remembering this house the way it used to be, before strangers came and moved everything a foot to the left, the way someone else had known it. The way you'd know it if you'd walked it half asleep in the dark every single night for 40 years, reaching for that switch, leaning into that turn, opening that cupboard for a glass of water, until the path was worn so deep into you that it outlasted you. I never told my wife that part. I don't entirely know how I'd have said it. I just quietly learned to reach a little further to the left, the way the house seemed to want me to, and after a while it stopped feeling strange and started feeling almost polite, like sharing a home with someone who'd lived there longer and knew where everything really went and was patient enough to wait for me to learn. Story 2. This next one is shorter and stranger, and it was told to me by someone who swore she didn't believe in any of it. A board, a question, an answer that nobody at the table could have known. I want to start by saying I don't believe in any of this. I want that on the record right at the front, because what happened doesn't fit anywhere comfortable, and I've had years to turn it over and I still can't make it lie flat. I'm not a superstitious person. I check the science on things. I'm telling you this so you understand I'm not the type to want a story like this to be true. We were 16. 4 of us at a sleepover at Dana's house. The kind of night that's mostly just sitting on a bedroom floor talking about nothing until 2 in the morning. Someone, I think it was Marie, had brought one of those boards. The cheap, mass-produced kind you can buy at any toy shop. Printed cardboard and a plastic pointer, sold as a game, shrink-wrapped, completely unmysterious. We set it up more to laugh than anything else. None of us took it seriously. That matters later. We did the usual things you do. We turned off the big light and lit a couple of candles because the atmosphere felt incomplete without them. We all put our fingers on the pointer, that light touch you're supposed to use, and we asked the questions everyone asks. Is anyone here? The pointer drifted to yes, and we all accused each other of pushing. How did you die? It spelled out something vague, and we laughed nervously. What's your name? A few letters that didn't make a word. The usual. Everyone secretly nudging, everyone certain it was somebody else doing the nudging. The whole thing running on teenage nerves and candlelight. Then Dana, who'd been quiet, leaned in and asked a question that was meant to be a joke. She asked in a sort of sing-song mocking voice, "Find them? When's my birthday?" It was a stupid question, and we all knew it was stupid because we all knew Dana's birthday. It was in August. We'd been to her birthday parties. There was nothing to get right or wrong here. It was the safest possible thing to ask, which is exactly why she asked it, to expose the whole thing as nonsense. The pointer moved. It was slow and it was steady, and it didn't feel like any of the playful nudging from before. It went to a number, then another, then it spelled out a month. A date in March, and we laughed because, of course, it was wrong. March. Dana's birthday is in August. Everyone knew that. The board had finally proven itself to be exactly the cardboard toy it was. Marie said something like, "Well, that's that, it's broken," and started to take her fingers off. But Dana hadn't left. I noticed it before the others did. She'd gone very still and very pale in the candlelight, and she was staring at the board like it had said something in a language only she understood. The room sort of cooled around her silence. After a long moment she took her hand off the pointer, slowly, and she said in a strange, flat voice that her mother had told her something once. Something she wasn't really supposed to know, that had come out by accident during an argument years before, and then been quietly never mentioned again. She'd been born early, not a little early. Dangerously early, the kind of early where the doctors used careful words and her parents didn't sleep for a month. She'd spent the first part of her life in a hospital incubator, fighting, while everyone waited to see if she'd make it. And the day they actually celebrated as her birthday, the August date, the date on all the cards and cakes, wasn't the day she was born at all. It was the day they finally got to bring her home. Her parents had chosen to mark the homecoming instead of the birth, because the birth had been too frightening to celebrate, too close to the other thing. So the real night, the actual night she came into the world, fighting in far too small, was a different date entirely. Months earlier, in March. None of us had known that. I want to be very clear about that, because I've replayed it 1,000 times looking for the trick. Dana herself had barely known it. It was a thing half overheard in an argument and buried. There was no one with their fingers on that pointer who could have known the real date of her birth. Not Marie, not me, not the other girl whose name I've embarrassingly forgotten now, 30 years on, and not Dana. Not in any way she was thinking about, not consciously, not enough to move a plastic pointer to it on purpose without us seeing. We put the board away after that. Nobody wanted to ask it anything else. We blew out the candles and turned the big light back on and talked very hard about other things until the strangeness wore off enough to sleep. Dana took the board home, and I never asked what she did with it. And I've always assumed she threw it away, or buried it at the bottom of a closet where she wouldn't have to look at it. We don't really talk anymore, Dana and I. Life does that. But every March I think about her, and I wonder if somewhere in her own house, in the dark, she celebrates that day quietly now. The real one. Some things, it seems, know the truth about us even when we've all agreed, kindly and for good reasons, to forget it. Story 3. Now we go into the bedroom, into the deep middle of the night, to the kind of visitor that comes when you're almost asleep. This one is simple. That's exactly why it's frightening. This is the one I've never been able to shake, and the reason it stays with me is that it's so simple. The other strange things in my life have details I can argue with, angles I can explain away on a good day. This one has almost nothing to it, and that's exactly why it won't leave. I'll set it up honestly. I was 30-something, sleeping badly the way you do in a stretch of life when work is hard and the days blur. I'd been going to bed too late and waking up too early. That thin, exhausted sleep that doesn't really rest you. I mention this because I know how it sounds, and I know what an exhausted brain can do. I've done the reading since. I'm not coming to you uninformed. I woke up in the night. I don't know what woke me. There was no sound that I remember, no dream I was surfacing from, just the sudden flat awareness of being awake in the dark, when you'd rather not be. The room was dark, but not completely black. There was a streetlight outside that always leaked, a thin gray line around the edge of the curtain, enough that once your eyes adjusted you could make out the shapes of the room, the wardrobe, the chair with clothes on it, the doorway, and the figure standing at the foot of my bed. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because everyone immediately pictures something dramatic, something with a face, something out of a film. It was nothing like that. It was just a person-shaped darkness, a patch of the dark that was a little darker than the dark around it, roughly the height and width of a person, standing very still in the place where a person would stand if they had walked up to the foot of the bed and stopped to look down at someone sleeping. No features, no glowing eyes, no detail at all. Just a shape, a presence, an absence of light in the shape of someone watching me. Now here's where the science comes in, and I want to give it its due, because for years I leaned on it to get back to sleep. Sleep paralysis. It's well documented. Your mind wakes up before your body does. You find yourself unable to move, and the frightened, half-dreaming brain reliably generates exactly this: a sense of presence, often a dark figure, often standing near the bed or sitting on the chest. It's one of the most common experiences human beings have. It's almost certainly the root of half the world's ghost stories. I know all of this. I made my peace with it for a long time. A glitch in the machinery of sleep, nothing more. But here is the part the science doesn't cover. The part I keep coming back to at 3 in the morning when I should be sleeping. I wasn't paralyzed. That's the whole problem. The whole reason this story exists. I could move. I tested it, lying there, the way you do when fear is telling you to stay frozen. I made myself wiggle my fingers, and they moved. I could move my feet. My body was mine. So I did the bravest thing I've ever done, which doesn't sound brave, but in the moment felt enormous. I reached over slowly to the lamp on the bedside table, and I turned it on. And the figure didn't vanish. That's the thing. A hallucination should vanish. Light floods the room. The dreaming brain snaps fully awake. The phantom is gone instantly. The way a soap bubble is just gone when it pops. That's how it's supposed to work. But this didn't pop. It faded. Slowly. Over what I would swear was 2 full seconds. Real seconds. The kind you can count. The shape at the foot of my bed thinned out and dissolved. The way your eyes lose a shape when you finally stop staring at it. The way steam comes apart in the air. 2 seconds of a dark figure standing in lamplight, growing gradually less until there was nothing there but the foot of my bed and the wardrobe behind it. And in those 2 seconds, as it faded, it did one more thing. The thing that wakes me even now, years later. The detail my mind hands me unprompted when I'm trying to fall asleep. It tilted its head, just slightly, the small tilt a person makes when something has caught them off guard. The tilt you give when the thing you were quietly watching suddenly does something you didn't expect it to do. When the sleeping person you assumed was sleeping reaches out and turns on a light and looks directly back at you. I sleep with the lamp on now. I'm a grown adult, well past the age where that's supposed to be necessary, and I sleep with the lamp on every single night, and on the nights I forget, I wake at some point and turn it on, half asleep, before I've even decided to. You can decide for yourself what that says about me. I decided a long time ago to stop deciding and just leave the light on. Story 4. This next one is older than the rest. It's the kind of story that gets passed down aunt to niece, the kind you half believe and never quite shake. A babysitter, alone in a house, and a telephone that would not stop ringing. This one was told to me by my aunt, who swears up and down that it happened to a girl she went to school with, which is, of course, exactly the phrasing that should make you suspicious. The friend of a friend, the girl whose name changes a little each telling. I know, I've heard every version, but I'm going to tell it the way my aunt told it, on the night she babysat me as a child, because the way she told it is the reason that, to this day, I check the whole house before I let myself settle for the night. The girl was babysitting. This was decades ago now, before any of the things we'd reach for today. Before mobile phones, when a phone was a single object fixed to a wall and you went to it. 2 children in the house, both young, both asleep upstairs by 8 o'clock, which the girl had managed without much trouble. An easy night. The parents had said they'd be home by 11. The girl had homework she wasn't doing, and the television on low in a quiet house, and no reason in the world to feel anything but comfortable. Around 9, the phone rang. She got up and answered it the way you did then, lifting the receiver, saying hello into it. And there was no one there. Or rather, there was someone there, because she could hear them, breathing, slow even, unhurried breathing, the breathing of someone in no rush at all. And then, After a few seconds of that, a soft click as the line went dead. She stood there a moment with the dial tone in her ear, then shrugged it off. The wrong number, a bad connection. These things happened all the time back then. She went back to the sofa. It rang again about 20 minutes later. She almost didn't get up for it, but you did in those days, because a ringing phone might be the parents checking in. So she answered, and it was the same, the breathing, slow and patient and close. And this time, just before the click, a voice. Soft, very calm, almost gentle. It asked her whether she'd checked on the children. She assumed it was a prank now, a friend messing with her, or one of the older boys from the neighborhood who knew she'd be sitting tonight, putting on a creepy voice for a laugh. She told whoever it was in no uncertain terms to grow up and stop calling, and she hung up harder than she needed to. But it had unsettled her more than she wanted to admit, so she turned the television up a little, to fill the house with ordinary sound, to push back the quiet that had started to feel like it was leaning in. She tried to focus on the program, she really did. But she became aware, the way you become aware of a clock you stopped hearing, that the house above her was very quiet. Not asleep quiet, just quiet. And she couldn't quite remember the last time she'd heard one of the small, ordinary sounds that children make, even in their sleep, a creak of a bed, the soft thump of a foot against a wall, the cough or the murmur of a child rolling over. The third call came a little after 10. She stared at the phone for a long time before she answered it. And she only answered because not answering felt somehow worse than answering. She lifted the receiver and said nothing, and the voice didn't breathe this time. It didn't ask if she'd checked. It simply told her, in that same soft, almost kind tone, that she really ought to go and check on the children now, that it had been so very quiet upstairs for such a long time now. Too quiet, it said. Children are never that quiet. And sitting there, with the receiver against her ear, and the television murmuring and the dark pressing at the windows, she realized that it was right, that it had been quiet, truly quiet for over an hour, that she had not heard a single small sound from upstairs in all that time, that children are never, ever that quiet, and that some part of her had known it for a while and had been carefully not thinking about it. And my aunt's telling the girl didn't go upstairs. She ran. She dropped the phone and went straight out the front door into the cold and the dark and the empty street, and she flagged down the first car that came, and the people in it took one look at her face and didn't argue. The police came. The parents came racing home with their hearts in their throats. And the children, when everyone went up together, were fine. Both of them, fast asleep in their beds, exactly where they should be, undisturbed, breathing softly the way sleeping children do. But the calls, that's the part my aunt always slowed down for. They traced the calls, the way you could even then, and all three of them, every single one, had come from inside the house, from the upstairs phone, the extension in the hallway, the one right outside the children's room. Someone had been up there the entire evening, quiet, patient, standing in the dark hallway just a few steps from where two children slept, lifting the receiver every 20 minutes, dialing down to the girl sitting in the warm, lit room below, and asking her, in that gentle voice, whether she had noticed yet. My aunt always ended it the same way. She'd tuck the blanket a little tighter, and she'd say, "And that is why, my love, you check the house first. Not last. First. Before you ever get comfortable. You make sure you know exactly who is in it with you." And then she'd turn off the light, and I would lie there absolutely certain I would never sleep again, and of course I always did. Story 5. We're halfway now. If you're still with me, let your eyes stay closed for this one. It happened in a hotel, in one of those identical rooms that all blur into one. And it begins with a telephone ringing at 3 in the morning. I traveled for work for the better part of 15 years, or I used to, before the job changed and the travel dried up, And I'll tell you what nobody tell you about that life. After enough nights in enough hotels, they all become one hotel. One long base corridor, one identical room, with the bed against the same wall, and the same painting of nothing above it, and the same hum of the same air conditioning. You stop seeing them. You move through them half asleep. So I really notice when something breaks the pattern. This was an ordinary trip to an ordinary city for an ordinary set of meetings. I checked in late, the way you do, ate something forgettable, and went up to the room. I had an early start, so I called down to the front desk and asked for a wake-up call at 6. They confirmed it, perfectly routine, the kind of small transaction you forget the second it's over. In those days, the wake-up call was an automated thing, a recorded voice the system played down the line to your room at the hour you'd set. Nothing personal about it, a machine calling a machine. I set my own phone alarm as a backup, the way I always did, and I went to sleep. The phone rang at 3. I came up out of sleep the way you do when a phone rings in a dark, unfamiliar room. That lurch of not knowing for a moment where you are, what city, what bed. I fumbled for the receiver on instinct, got it to my ear, said something that was barely a word, and the recorded voice played, the same pleasant, level automated message they'd play at 6. Good morning. This is your wake-up call. Calm and bright and entirely wrong, because it was 3 in the morning. Black dark outside, the city dead quiet below. I was too tired to be properly unsettled. I was mostly just annoyed. I assumed someone at the desk had fat-fingered the system, set the call for 3 instead of 6, or knocked something on a keyboard. I hung up, muttered about it, and went back to sleep, and I genuinely did fall back asleep, because exhaustion beats curiosity every time. At 6, the real call came. The same recording, the same bright, "Good morning." And this time it was correct. It was actually morning, and I got up and showered and dressed and went down to my meetings and mostly forgot the whole thing. The day swallowed it. It was only on my way out, checking out the next day, bag over my shoulder, that it surfaced again as a small irritation worth mentioning. I leaned on the front desk and told the woman there, not angrily, just as a helpful note, that their automated system had glitched and called my room at 3 in the morning the first night. They might want to look at it, I said. She did the thing people at front desks do, the polite, "Let me just check that for you," with a practiced smile, and she turned to a screen and tapped at it. And the smile faded a little. She looked for a while. She scrolled. She tapped some more. And then she said slowly that there was only one wake-up call logged for my room for that entire stay. The 6 o'clock, there was no record of any call at 3. Nothing at all. I said, well, the system must have called and not logged it. And she said, and I remember this clearly because of how carefully she said it, that the system couldn't do that. The automated wake-up call only fires if there's a call scheduled in the system for that room at that time. It's not a thing that goes off on its own. And it's not a thing a person can just trigger by accident. You can't simply dial a guest's room and play them the recording. That's not how any of it works. For the recorded message to play in my room at 3 in the morning, there had to be a scheduled call. And there wasn't one. There was no record of the 3 a.m. call existing at all. So I asked her the obvious question. I asked then who had called my room at 3 in the morning using the hotel's own automated recording with no record of it ever happening. And she started to answer. She opened her mouth, and there was the beginning of a word, the shape of an explanation forming. And then she just stopped. She closed her mouth. Something passed over her face, and she looked down at her screen, and she printed my receipt, and she handed it to me, and she wished me a safe trip, in a voice that had gone carefully flat, and she would not look at me again, not once. She found other things to look at the entire time, until I picked up my bag and left. I've stayed in a great many hotels since then, hundreds probably. I don't set wake-up calls anymore. I use my own phone, my own alarm, my own devices that I understand and control. If something in one of those identical beige rooms wants to wake me at 3 in the morning, it's going to have to find a way to do it without my help and without my permission, and I would very much prefer it didn't try. Story 6. This next one is gentler. There's no harm in it, just a warning. And the one giving the warning is a dog. If you've ever loved an animal, you'll understand why the man in this story listened. People who've never had a dog don't fully understand this, so let me explain it before I get to the strange part, because the strange part only lands if you understand the ordinary part first. A dog reads a room before you've even crossed the threshold. They tell you in 100 small ways whether a place is fine or whether a place is not fine, long before you'd have any way of knowing yourself. You learn to trust it. After enough years with a good dog, you stop second-guessing them. If the dog says a thing is fine, it's fine. If the dog says a thing is wrong, you start paying attention. And mine was the least dramatic dog you could imagine. A big, heavy, profoundly relaxed animal who slept through thunderstorms with his legs in the air. Fireworks didn't move him. The doorbell, which sends most dogs into a frenzy, earned at most one eye opening and then closing again. He was, by temperament, completely unbothered by the world. That's important. That's the whole foundation of this. He was not a nervous dog. He did not see things that weren't there. He was the most level-headed creature I have ever lived with. We moved into a rental, a perfectly nice place, an unremarkable house on an unremarkable street, the kind of place you rent for a year or two and barely remember afterward. And from the very first night, the dog refused to go down one particular stretch of the upstairs hallway, the section outside the spare bedroom, not the whole upstairs. That's the thing. He'd happily lie in our bedroom, trot in and out of the bathroom, take the stairs a dozen times a day. But at that one spot in the hall, the patch of carpet outside the closed spare room door, he would stop, sit down, and stare at the door, not growling. This what made it so unsettling in the slow way that unsettles you over weeks rather than all at once. If he'd growled, I'd have understood it. Dogs growl. There's a mouse in the wall, a smell, a draft. He didn't growl. He wasn't even afraid exactly. His hackles stayed down. His body stayed loose. He just watched the door, steadily, patiently. The way you watch someone across a room at a party when you can't place them and you don't trust them and you'd rather know where they are at all times. That kind of watching, calm and constant and absolutely fixed. I checked the room, of course, more than once, many times over the weeks. I'd open the door expecting, I don't know, a draft I could feel, a smell I could place, a sound, a stain on the ceiling, something. There was nothing. It was a spare room, boxes we hadn't unpacked, a folded-up bed frame leaning against one wall, a built-in closet with its door shut. No draft, no smell, no sound, nothing a person or a dog should have any reason to react to. I'd stand in there feeling slightly foolish, and the dog would sit in the hallway behind me, not coming in, watching me stand in the room. He wouldn't enter. This went on for months, and here's the honest truth about living alongside something strange. You get used to it. You absorb it. The thing that would horrify you on day 1 becomes, by day 50, just a feature of the house, a quirk, a thing you stop narrating to yourself. The dog watched the door. I made dinner. Life went on around it. I stopped checking the room. I more or less stopped noticing, the way you stop noticing anything that doesn't escalate, anything that just sits there at the edge of your life being quietly wrong. Then, one night, late, he started barking. And it wasn't his doorbell bark. The lazy single warning. It was something I had never heard from him in all the years I'd had him. A low, steady, serious bark, deliberate, spaced out, aimed directly at that door, and he would not stop. It went on and on. I got up, heart going, and I went out into the hall, and there he was, planted in front of the spare room door, barking that terrible level bark at it. I had never seen him like that. I want to be clear, I had never once seen him like that. I opened the door. I fully expected nothing. By then I'd opened it dozens of times to nothing, and some tired part of me was already composing a reassurance. It's nothing, boy, see? Nothing. Let's go back to bed. The room was the same as always. Boxes. The folded bed frame. Empty. But the closet door. The built-in closet door inside the room, which I always kept shut, which I had shut myself, which I knew with total certainty had been shut that very afternoon when I'd grabbed something from a box, was standing wide open, open onto the dark inside it. And my dog who had not set foot in that room in 3 months, who had refused that doorway every single day since we moved in, walked past me, right past my legs, into the room with purpose, straight across to the open closet, and he stopped in front of it, and he looked up into the dark of it. Up, at something at about the height a person's face would be, and he went completely, utterly silent. We moved out the following month. I told the landlord it was about the commute, which was a lie. The commute was fine. The dog never went down that hallway again, not in the last weeks we were there. And here's the thing I think about most. In every house we lived in afterward, and there were a few, he developed a habit he'd never had before. He checks closets, everywhere. Any new place we move, the first thing he does is go room to room and put his head into each closet, look up into it for a moment, the same height, the same searching look, and then move on. Satisfied, I always think that whatever he was watching for in that hallway isn't waiting in this one. He's an old dog now. He still does it, every new room. Just puts his head in, looks up into the dark, and checks. Story 7. We're nearly at the end now. This next one is quiet, and it's sad, and it's my favorite of all of them. It's about a phone call that came from a number that no longer belonged to anyone living. My grandfather passed in the spring. We were close, closer than I was with almost anyone, and I won't dwell on that part because grief isn't the strange part of this story and you didn't come here for mine. But you need to know we were close, because it's the reason the rest of it lands the way it does. The reason I couldn't just delete it and move on. He'd had the same phone number for as long as I'd been alive. It was one of those numbers I knew by heart without ever trying to. The way you know a handful of numbers from childhood that are simply burned in. After he died, in the practical fog that follows a death, somebody, an aunt I think, being helpful, being efficient in the way people are when they need a task to do with their hands, called the phone company and had the line disconnected. Within a week it was gone. The number went back into the pool, the great churning pool of disconnected numbers that the phone companies eventually reassign, because numbers are a finite resource, and the dead don't need them. Some months later, that number, his number, got given to a stranger. Someone new, the way every old number eventually does. It was autumn by then. The first hard grief had softened into the duller, more permanent kind. And one afternoon, an ordinary afternoon, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. And the notification showed his name. I need you to understand why that alone stopped me cold. I'd never deleted his contact. Of course I hadn't. Who deletes their dead grandfather from their phone? That's not a thing you can make yourself do. So his name and his old number were still saved in my phone, linked together, the way they'd been for years. And when a call or a message comes from a saved number, the phone shows you the name, not the number. So my screen lit up with his name, a voicemail from him. That was the first small heartbreak, before I'd even listened. Just seeing his name sit there in my notifications as though no time had passed, as though he might be calling to ask if I'd eaten. My rational mind caught up a second later. The number had been reassigned. This was the stranger who had it now. Misdialing or leaving a message meant for someone else, a wrong number that my phone was helpfully, cruelly labeling with a dead man's name. That's all it was. I almost deleted it without listening, because listening felt like it would hurt for no reason, like picking at something. I'm glad I didn't, and I'm not glad. I have genuinely never been able to decide which, and it's been years now. I listened to it. It was 11 seconds long. There was no voice. No one spoke. What there was a room. The ambiance of an indoor space, that specific texture of air that a recording picks up when a phone is somewhere quiet and enclosed. I could hear a clock, the soft mechanical tick of an actual clock, the kind he had, the kind almost nobody has anymore. And underneath that, the low even hum that a refrigerator makes, the sound of a kitchen at rest. And underneath even that, very faint, almost beneath hearing, the sound of someone breathing. Not heavy breathing, nothing frightening. The slow, absent, concentrated breathing of a person working at something close with their hands. Head down, absorbed, the exact way my grandfather breathed when he was fixing something small and fiddly. A radio he was always taking apart. A clock, the arm of his own glasses, sitting at the kitchen table under the light with a little screwdriver, breathing slow and steady and entirely content in his task. 11 seconds of that. Then the message ended. I called the number back. My hands were quite steady. A woman answered, and she was confused, and she was kind about being confused, which somehow made it worse. She said she'd had this number for about 2 months now. She didn't know me. She was sorry, she said, but she thought I might have the wrong person. And when I asked carefully whether she called me earlier that day or left me any message at all, she said no, definitely not. She'd been at work all afternoon. Her phone had been in her bag the entire time, on silent, untouched. She hadn't made a single call. She certainly hadn't left a voicemail for a number she didn't recognize. There was, she said gently, no way it had been her. I still have the voicemail. I backed it up 3 times now, across 3 different devices, because I am terrified of losing it, and I am, in a different way, terrified of keeping it, and I haven't been able to resolve that terror in either direction, so I just keep it safe instead. 11 seconds of a quiet room, a clock, a refrigerator, a man breathing slow and easy while he works at something small with his hands, at a kitchen table, under a light somewhere I can't get to. It is the most ordinary recording in the entire world. There is nothing on it, and it is the only thing of his I have that's new. Everything else I own of his is old from before. This came after. This came from after, and I will never, ever delete it. Story 8. This is the last one. It's the quietest of them all, so don't fight it if you feel yourself going under. Let the words get soft and far away. The story will be fine without you. That's rather the point of it. My mother lived alone at the end in the house I grew up in. The same house, the same rooms, 50 years in one place. And after she passed, I stayed there for a while to do the things somebody always has to do. The slow, sad work of going through a life that's been packed into a house over half a century. Boxes and bags and decisions, what to keep, what to give away, what to simply sit and hold for a while before you can put it down. Grief and cardboard. You know the shape of it by now. You and I, we've had a few of these tonight. And the house did things, small things from the very first night. I'd come downstairs in the morning and the door I had definitely closed the night before would be standing open. A light I was certain I'd switched off would be burning softly in an empty room. The little radio in the kitchen, an old battered thing she'd had forever and loved unreasonably, would be playing low when I came down, tuned to her station, the one she always listened to, even though I would have sworn, would have put money on it, that I'd switched it off before going up to bed the night before. And I'll tell you the truth now. The truth I think you already understand. Lying there in the dark with your eyes most of the way closed and your breathing gone slow and even. I wasn't frightened. Not once. Not for a single moment of any of it. Because the house wasn't doing anything it hadn't always done. It wasn't doing anything strange at all when I really thought about it. The door standing open in the morning was the door she always left open, between the kitchen and the hall, so the warmth could move through the house. The light burning in the empty room was the hall light, the one she'd left on every single night of my childhood, in case I woke and was afraid of the dark and needed to find my way to her. And the radio low tuned to her station, she always had it going. For company, she said, in the house that had got too quiet. She couldn't stand a silent house. The house wasn't haunted. I came to understand that slowly, over those weeks, and the understanding was the opposite of frightening. It was almost unbearably gentle. The house was simply keeping her habits. Doing the small things she had done every night for 30, 40, 50 years, the things worn so deep into the bones of the place that they outlasted the hand that did them. The way the first house tonight remembered its old light switch in the dark. The way a body keeps reaching for a banister that isn't there. The way an old number carried the sound of a man breathing while he worked. Rooms, remember. People wear grooves into the places they love, night after night after night, and the grooves don't vanish just because the person does. Not right away. Not all at once. On my last night in the house, with most of it packed up around me and the keys due to go back the next day, I did something. I'm not sure I could fully explain why, except that it felt like the only right thing left to do. I went around the house and I left the door open, the kitchen door, the way she always left it. I turned the hall light on and left it burning, the way she always left it on for me. And I went into the kitchen, and I turned the old radio on, low, to her station. And I left it playing before I went up to bed for the last time in the house I grew up in. And in the morning the door was closed, the hall light was off, the radio was silent. The house, for the first time in all those weeks, was completely still. Everything I had set going in the night had been gently, quietly switched off. The house was at rest. I like to think, and you can let yourself think it too, drifting off now, that she'd only been waiting for someone to do it for her. Just once. To leave the light on the way she'd left it on for everyone else her whole life, with no one ever leaving one on for her. And that once it was finally done, once someone had finally tended the house the way she always had, she could let go of the small nightly tasks she'd been quietly, lovingly carrying on, without a body to carry them. She could let the house be quiet at last. She could rest. So leave a light on tonight if you like, not because anything's coming. Nothing's coming. Leave it on because somewhere at some point someone used to leave one on for you when you was small and the dark was large. And the rooms remember that. The rooms hold on to the people who loved us for a little while after. That's all a ghost has ever really been. Good night. Sleep well. And we'll see you again next time the lights go out.